All right, give us a sync. What's up?
What's up, man? Oh, good.
Yeah, I think today we're going to talk about cultural evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we have to talk a bit about culture, give a primer on evolution or evolution theories more broadly, maybe beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm actually excited to see you put the topic of beliefs within that, because I don't see that every time or very often. So I think that's going to be interesting. It's a brain. Well, it's a set of ideas, right? That can be the range can be broad on in relation to tools that you use to describe, to think about it. So you have mathematical modeling, you have computer modeling, you have work done on ethology, anthropology. So it's quite broad, and you can go many places with it. So I am curious to hear your ideas.
Yeah, I guess first, do you want to give us at least a broad definition of culture?
Yeah, very broad. Actually, I think defining it's not so complicated in the broad sense of it. It's just it's basically the idea that cultural change happens through a system or through mechanisms which are parallel to Darwinian evolution, or basically that's it. So we have basically the same set of mechanisms, with the exception of some key other mechanisms that we don't have. So we have variability. So culture varies. It's different here and there. Ideas vary, technology vary, and we have inherency. So it is transmitted, and there is differential fitness. So some ideas, technologies, or beliefs they fare better on some environments and not in others. And in contrast with Darwinian evolution, culture ways to change or I hear the word change all the time, but I would like to include spread, change, disappear, and so forth. So everything related to how cultural, let's call it things, to not call it tokens, are transformed. And what is different from Darwinian evolution is that it doesn't have particulate inheritance. So the inheritance is not Mendelian, and mutation, it's not exactly random. So because what we are using for transmission is our brains, they are biases on how information is changed when we are transmitting it. Basically, that's it. It's a way to describe how cultures are diverse, how they become, how ideas become, how a culture becomes stable, how it disappears, how it spreads, how it's transformed.
Right on. I think we'll maybe even dive into some of the more specifics and break down some of the analogies with evolution as well. But can you give us also a definition of culture so we know what we're working with, like culture itself?
That's
the hard one.
Yeah, that's the hard one. Yeah. Kroeber, I think how many definitions he laid down? I think I don't know, hundreds of definitions of culture. Alfred Kroeber. Well, for this purpose, we can call culture socially transmitted information.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Very simple.
For this purpose.
Yeah. That's a good way to think about it. Yep. So
horizontally and vertically. So
yeah. What do you mean by horizontally and vertically?
Within our own generation and peers, and horizontally. So we learn. So that's well. it's again a parallel to Darwinian transmission. So that's why I have to mention because because there is no horizontal transmission of genes within Darwinian transmission. So I have to mention that. But we learn or we receive information, socially acquired information from people within our generation, within our from our peers, within our environment. But we also get information from people that are up us. Historically, let's say, like we can acquire this information is transmitted on a vertical line as well. So we are constantly using information that was produced quite a while ago.
Yeah, and I guess this touches upon something in the cultural evolution literature called dual inheritance theory, where you have vertical and horizontal inheritance from your peers and from your parents, but then also from sort of elders.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I guess so. The really interesting thing about evolution is that it posits a set of mechanisms that can be used for a wide range of things, and it takes basically some cues from thermodynamics. There's some entropy also has sort of analogous components. So it's basically looking at a way in which information can be transmitted, but then how from point A to point B, when you move across time, you end up having something different than what you started with. And it seems like biological systems, but also physical systems, seem to follow simple sets of rules through which information is passed on, but then also allows for ways in which the information can change as it is passed on. And so I think there's some really interesting, it was interesting to apply that to something like culture, because the typical Darwinian evolution and typical cultural theories are basically systems level approaches to what's going on. And you have component level approaches as well. So on the sort of genetic side, you have people working on the actual components rather than the system itself.
Say it again.
So on the molecular side, so you have like a molecular geneticist, and then sort of the broader evolutionary theorists, and they don't quite see eye to eye, right? There's evolutionary theory, and they're both working in this sort of modern synthesis, which is Darwinian and Mendelian, a combination of the two to make sense of how we evolved. But when you break down the system level analysis, which is the Darwinian side, and the component level analysis, which is the sort of the genetic side, you get some incongruence. And there is still a need for some kind of like grand theory in evolution, in the same way that in the cultural evolution versus individual psychology, you have this system level versus component level gap, right? Because the people who are broader thinkers, system thinkers, tend to think that the system is it's the unit of theoretical interest for them, right? They think that the system is what's guiding, and the individuals change according to the system. And then you have the component level, the individuals. The people who study the component level think that the components make up the system, and that the causal arrow is from component to system rather than system to component. So there's this kind of disagreement. So when we look at, I think you and I found this out quite early, is that you deal a little bit more on the system side. I deal a little bit more on the component side. And that's why when I look at culture, I deal specifically with beliefs, right? And that's why the parts of cultural evolution that are interesting to me, although I don't quite work in the realm of memes, is that memes end up being something really interesting as a concept. It's Dawkins' way to think about introducing the concept of genetics into the concept of cultural evolution. So I think that's quite an interesting thing, especially and we don't really have this in between psychology and culture. Psychology and sociology still have this gap. We don't work well together. And that's true in genetics and evolution, but there are some folks working on combined accounts that take, I know there's one account that I like that I spend a bit of time with called Situated Darwinism, which I think his name was David Walsh. But he was working on saying, okay, obviously the system level pressures are important, but then also if you don't look at the agent, and centralized agent in a lot of the theory, then you're going to be missing out on some really important components. So it increases the significance, the impact of the individual, of epigenetics, of the individual in their environment, of unit level adaptation in the broader theory. And I think that that's what's really important about including beliefs and the understanding of beliefs in cultural evolution.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if that's such a if I agree with you that there are, well, we most of the time agree on that there are many gaps when we are talking about the superstructure and the individual and how one influenced the other. I think, but for cultural evolution, because when it was let's call it revived or brought back to life by Boyd, Hichard, Cavalli, Sforza, it started already with modeling, right? So mathematical modeling, and what I have a disclaimer that I am not an expert. I am a dude that have read a handful of books, and there are many people out there that probably have distinct ideas from mine. But when they start to modeling it in 70s, 80s, I believe they borrow from something that happened on after modern synthesis, which was populational genetics. So what they did is so you see what's happening there, right? So we're talking about genetics, which is very individual based, in transforming it into problems related to population, and developing tools to analyze the kind of interaction that there is between the unities and the population itself. And when Hichard and Boyd starts the modeling, what they're doing is they're borrowing from populational genetics. So it is born already like that. So from the models, and then I think now it kind of as much more researchers get into the field, getting trusted on the problems related to cultural evolution, then I think it starts to diversify, and then you can see like very kind of like isolated research on or either a modeling or the structure on which cultural evolution happens, and also on the individual level psychological processes that lead to it. So I think it was already like you can see some individuated research, but the way that it was born, it was already kind of in a integration kind of a situation, I guess. So I don't think it's I see much more of the problem with geneticists and well, I see much more the problem with psychologists and social scientists, for sure. I'm not so sure about the field of biology, how they. I think they might also not today have any problem with that. Maybe there is like so much narrow research on something that you just don't pay attention to anything else but what you were looking at on your microscope. But
yeah, between the geneticists and the sort of broader level thinkers about evolution, they have issues that right now are still unresolved. And that's the really interesting.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And I think that you make it a really interesting point. So when we do modeling work, there is a way to be doing the modeling work at the systems level where you're not accounting for the dynamics of the individual as much. Mm-hmm. So you try to paint more of the individuals with a broad brush so that you can have more explanatory power with your broader theory. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's actually one of the places that we get hung up, because we don't have a good understanding yet of belief dynamics. And that's one of the things that some people are working on. I'm amenable, really sympathetic to certain views, particularly views like active inference, which try to explain how biological life maintains itself in general, mm-hmm. and the information it maintains, why it maintains that information, which is basically looking at how systems mitigate uncertainties. And so this mitigation of uncertainty is the reason why one might maintain beliefs, mm-hmm. and then update the beliefs they maintain. So as they encounter an incongruence between what they believe and what they perceive, mm-hmm. that difference between belief and perception is definably uncertainty. So as I move about my environment, my imperative in the long term is to mitigate my uncertainties. I might engage in uncertain activities, but there's an information gathering component. So the long-term mitigation, though, the long-term goal is to mitigate the uncertainty. But I might engage in certain uncertain behaviors in order to gather the information to achieve that primary goal. So this is sort of like a broad view of an individual level dynamic active inference, which takes a lot of, again, cues from thermodynamics because it deals with information entropy rather than physical entropy to explain how individual behavior, basically.
Yeah, no, I see. But it is impossible to talk about culture without talking about the macro level, right? Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right? There is no culture of one person.
Yeah.
So if only you hold that belief, you cannot call that culture. You cannot.
Yeah.
My perspective.
No, definitely. It's kind of like wondering whether it's kind of like looking at evolution, right? Is that you cannot get evolution without the individual components. It doesn't make any sense. It's a phenomenon that emerges from biological life over time. And I think culture is the same thing, where you cannot get culture without looking at the individual components. And I think that's the main theoretical difference. Is some people like to focus on the component and say, if we understand the component better, we'll understand the system better. And some people say, well, if you're not looking at the system, then you don't even know what to look for in the component. And I think that's the primary division.
But there is something you can treat as a component. Is this?
Yeah.
You can treat as a component the individual, so the unity that's doing the transmission and the receiving of information. You can use it as a component, the information itself, right? So I've seen that. So there is obviously cultural attraction. I think actually cultural attraction would look at both, because it looked at the psychological architecture of an individual to say, well, those things are more prominent, salient or not, but also look at the information and say, well, look at the characteristics of this piece of information, right? This information has this and that feature, and therefore it would be more appealing to a human brain to be memorized or to be utilized pragmatically or something like that. So you can have like different kinds of unities on this system.
Yeah, I guess to me information is sort of like the protein analogy, right? In that it's the way the components themselves communicate, and it is something you can study on its own. Definitely, you can study information itself. We have some friends who do that, but also I think if you're not looking at the component that generates the information, then you're going to be missing some crucial elements of it again. And I think that's why I center so much of my work around beliefs, is because I see what makes somebody likely to hold a belief, understanding the dynamics of their beliefs to be a crucial component of understanding how cultures can change because of how much of the information we put out into the world and how much of the information changes us. There's sort of this, again, another term from evolution is niche construction. So it's the simple idea that our environments change us, and then we in turn change our environments. There's this sort of feedback loop. But the interesting thing is, without an environment, you don't get any biological system. Like a biological system is whole once it is in its environment. Put in a vacuum and it disappears. So you have this interesting thing where, depending on which level you are looking at, you can have slightly different units of interest, theoretically. So if you're looking at the human being as a whole system, you might look at its component parts. But if you look at society as its system, the human being all of a sudden becomes one of the component parts, and then groups, and then institutions, and then cultural variability. So all these things become the component parts of society as a whole. So there are these. So the human sits at this really interesting nexus, because beneath, you can take the human as an individual system, and if you break it down, you get biology. And then if you take the society as a system and you break it down into components, you get sociology. And then the study of the individual itself is the psychology, is that belief dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we can go for something here. Related. So I wanted to hear from you. What do you think? Because I know more or less which road you're gonna take, but I wanted you to start the walk. What do you think about the explanations, or the most prominent explanations on a Cultural Revolution of biased acquisition of information? So things like conformity and prestige bias.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
Because the thing that is completely related to is that information acquisition is as put by well, whatever is pay. I don't want to say
Yes.
names all the time, but it's payoff biased. So you see something as you're biased. You can even be biased to imagine the payoff as it is. But two prominent ideas would be conformity and prestige bias that would lead us to perceive payoffs of what should be acquired or not as preferential. So then this kind of information would have fitness, right? So this is more prone to be acquired, this is less prone to be acquired, and how that plays out with your idea of, and we don't even have to. I think it's really interesting that most of Cultural Revolution is focused on technology. I think that's really important. I think it's a good way to go from the biological aspect, from the evolutionary biological aspect to more complex constructs. But for this purpose, we can talk specifically about beliefs. So things that are not exactly physical manipulations of the environment that can have direct return on productivity or food or whatever, security or whatever. So just going for the belief systems and thinking about conformity and prestige bias especially.
Yeah, I think I'll start in one place, but feel free to guide the conversation more back towards conformity and prestige bias. But one of the main things for me is that I take all cognition to be motivated. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole field of research called motivated cognition. I think that's a redundant term. I think cognition without motivation doesn't make any sense, because any biological system has information that it maintains, and you can call that information something like a belief, because it uses that information to leverage to produce expectations, make predictions about its environment. So if biological systems are maintaining information, leveraging the information to make predictions about their environment, we can refer to that as a belief. So as I move throughout my environment, testing my beliefs and updating them, there are certain factors that will pressure me to shift my beliefs in one direction or the other. So the question that how I treat that is that which beliefs to update over others means that there's a relative hierarchy of beliefs, that some beliefs are more important than others. Therefore, if I encounter some information, I'm going to compare that information to the beliefs that I maintain. And the one that gets updated, the belief that's going to force the other belief to change, is the one that's more prioritized relative to the other. So if I encounter, if you tell me something as Guilherme, and I trust your opinion, and somebody else tells me another thing, I might have the belief that I might be correct about that particular topic might be less prioritized than my belief that you are correct about that topic. Mm-hmm. So I would update my belief in light of what you've said, because the relative prioritization of that belief that Guilherme is right about this topic is more prioritized than the belief that I have that I am right about the topic. So I think that if we...
Yeah. What does make my belief prioritize? What does make... Well, you mentioned trust or something like that, but...
Trust can work. The main thing is that I think, again, comes down to niche construction. in that an individual is building that socio-ecological niche, a niche, an individual space carved out in their physical and social environments that they can inhabit. And as they inhabit that space, the maintenance of that space is crucial to their survival, right? In that the one bit of evolutionary psychology that I take on is the idea that humans are social animals, and we have an imperative to be social, accepted, be socialized, and be accepted by our social environments. So that, I think that aspect is really important. And there's a whole bunch of literature backing that thesis, looking at how social pain is related to physical pain. It's possible that our ability to even measure social pain is built on top of the pre-existing nervous system that is built for pain itself, physical pain. We see social damage as physical damage because there's no other way to interpret that. It's built onto the same thing. So in that, if the individual is trying to maintain their place within their environment, build that socio-ecological niche, maintain that, then the beliefs that they think are necessary to maintain that are going to be the ones that are more prioritized. So if I think that my niche is my identity, that thing that I build in that niche is better served by thinking that you are better at these things than this other person, then I will default to you because that better serves my goals. If I think that there are certain people that I ought to be close with because that will provide me some kind of benefit, it doesn't need to be explicit. I think this is the cognitive element of it. I don't think that we're going around the world, going through our environments psychopathically, without any emotion whatsoever, and saying, I'm just going to do what I can to get ahead. But I think that as there's no ultimate end goal in survival, right? So there is no, it's not like trying to get ahead in a company. It's just trying to maintain yourself in your environment so you can go to certain people who provide you positive feedback. Stick around them if you have positive opinions of them.
Okay, I see that. But how? Okay, I mentioned this paper to you once, on which was we were talking about actually how social power is part of a niche construction system, and it was an interesting thing that I mentioned to you of a friendship being part of being one component of the niche, because having the label or having the concept of friendship create a stable relationship and reduce uncertainty on the expectations that you would have with the interactions that you would have with that person. So that person should be, if it's my friend, should be trustworthy. If it's my friend, it should be there if I need it. If it's my friend, and so on. And that seems to me very, 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 very well put. So okay, we know, we all know what friendship feels feels like. Let's say that. So that was very intuitive for me, but the source of the information that you are acquiring, the way that you put it, it didn't become very clear for me. How acquiring information from one person instead of the other within our social niche can lead us to some form of a prediction and which direction this information is going to flow.
I think one of the interesting things is, so when we look at friends and we look at the individuals that we incorporate into our identities, right? One of the main things that we're doing is anchoring ourselves in our social environments. So that element ends up becoming crucial, right? So when we start bringing people in, we start defining ourselves through those individuals. So if we're looking at somebody that we think is better at a particular thing, we will default to them. We will default to their understanding of things.
Okay, I see that. Well, I think for the conformity aspect is if you put it in a social niche construction, it's pretty clear what happens, right? So everybody believes in this thing. It's better I do believe in this thing, because then I don't get out of the niche. I don't get out of the social structure on which I am, and if, as you mentioned before, it's bad for me to get out of the social structure that maintain me alive, or maintain my ancestors alive. Or and now you get to the point of seeing someone as competent, and then the aspect of competence as being the crucial point of acquiring socially transmitted information. You perceive someone as, okay, this person is competent, that's who I should be learning from, right? And nowadays we still see people actually imitating or copying other people that do not seem to be very competent on some aspects on which they have been copied, right? And that's interesting, no? So what happens when people adopt very damaging lifestyles because of a pop culture icon or something like that, or even kind of very neutral kind of adherence to, I don't know, style or things like that. When you have someone that you are actually copying or imitating or acquiring the information from, on how to dress, how to think, or how you should come up with your business. So, or I don't know, just buy car's insurance from an athlete when you see a commercial, when this athlete doesn't know anything about car insurance or whatever, but it is. So we seeing these people as competent, and are they fundamental for our social niche to be stable? Because that's crucial aspect of cultural evolution today, right? So we have those billboards everywhere, basically, and so I was thinking, what actually do you? So those are the questions. How does this thing lead us to what you said, maintaining a social niche structure, and how does you perceive these models as competent?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing. We are susceptible to messaging that gives us the idea that we might be better at building a social niche. So that's not phrased well. We are, as we are trying to improve our social standing, we look for cues in our environments. And this is one of the crucial ways that our environments shape us. So in as much as I might be looking at how you navigate a forest, if I'm also trying to navigate the forest, I'm also going to watch how you navigate your social environment as you navigate your social environment. And if you are doing something as you navigate the physical environment that improves your ability to navigate it, then I might also adopt that. And I think the same thing happens in social environments. So as I see somebody navigating their social environment better than me, I'm going to pick up on those elements that I think are feasible for me. Mm-hmm. So if a star is an incredible singer, or they're remarkably good looking, or something like that, I might not be able to copy those things, but I might be able to copy how they dress and other things about them that make them appealing to other people. Mm-hmm. And I think this is why individuals, artists, famous people become brands. And I think it's why anytime somebody becomes a brand in an industry, we praise that person as an innovator for becoming a brand, which is kind of ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. In the United States, the first lady, the first time that the partner of a president became a cultural icon, which is John F. Kennedy's wife, it was this thing that people praise her for, because she became a symbol, an idol. All of a sudden, what she wore, what she spoke, what she liked, all of these things were things people were emulating, and they figured out they could sell that. They figured out that they could market not just the president and his style, but the president's wife and her style. And it's this really strange sort of thing. The same thing with Michael Jordan in the NBA. Nobody was selling themselves as a brand. Michael Jordan, like Jacqueline Kennedy decades before him, turned himself into a brand. And then people were like, he was an innovator. He changed the game. Obviously, he's one of the best players of all time, if not the greatest. But that aspect of it, I find really ridiculous, that we praise people for turning themselves into brands in a new environment in which nobody had done that. But both of them saw this crucial thing, and many before them and after them in different industries, is that they're like, people will want to be me, and they will want to be me in ways which are different from the way in which I'm famous. Michael Jordan's a great basketball player, but all of a sudden his style became famous. And that's actually the same thing with another basketball player, Walt Clyde Frazier, who had such an impeccable style. I mean, he's dope style, really, really good. Even though he stopped playing before I was born, I know about Frazier's style, right? And that's an incredible thing. But again, it has nothing to do with his basketball ability. So I think that's one of the core components is we look to people that we idolize for whatever reason, and we adopt some of the aspects of them because there's confusion. Even if you intellectualize it, even if you're cognizant of it, there's still a confusion about what aspect of them is worthwhile.
How can there be a confusion?
The thing is, the fact that people idolize or want to wear what a famous person is wearing is odd. I don't think that that's not a norm. I don't think that it's not a common human thing. I don't mean to say that I don't do it.
You think it's odd?
I think it's so strange.
No, you think it's strange, but
perfectly normal.
Perfectly normal.
Yeah. I think it's a perfectly normal thing to do. I know that I do it, but I think it's so strange. Like from an outsider's point of view, onto how humans function, the fact that we idolize people, the fact that we want to emulate people, there are people who pick up on the laugh of the people around them. There are people who pick up on, obviously we pick up mannerisms. I know I've picked up mannerisms from people. But again, these things are not even, I guess you could be conscious of it. You could say, I want to change my laugh. Their laugh's nice. That would be a bit more strange. But there are ways in which we pick up the mannerisms of our friends that are subconscious.
Yeah. I don't know. I think for that, there is a component that I wanted to bring to the table, but I wanted to still press on this button. It's just like, how still can there be confusion of what is their field of competence? So I understand what you said, and it makes sense for me that this person is not only good on playing basketball, but I think this person is also good on socializing because it built something out of interactions with people. So there is something that this person has that is not only about the basket. It's hard to talk about that because Jordan is just so good. It's really counterintuitive that you would copy, that you would not presume that he made millions because how good he is on playing, right? And not because of what kind of a style he has or anyone else. So how there can still be confusion of what traits should I learn when it seems to be very, very intuitive. If Paris Hilton tried to sell you a car insurance, is just very intuitive, or I don't know. I don't think that's a real example, but there are very ridiculous good examples that I don't remember right now. That is very intuitive and it still happen.
Intuitive in what way?
Intuitive that Paris Hilton doesn't know anything about cars, insurance.
Oh, intuitively ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. But this is how, and I think we mentioned...
She might know. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned this before, this is the crux of advertising is social comparison. Maybe we mentioned this with Angarika, but this is the crux of it. We know that individuals are going to be looking out into the world for ways to improve their niche, their social standing. And this comes in the way of ads. Like we've built whole economies based on the fact that individuals are looking to improve their standing in their social environments. And this comes in the form of ads about any possible thing, but then it also comes in the form of self-help books and then any type of merchandising. Why would you wear a Michael Jordan t-shirt? A lot of people wear Michael Jordan t-shirts. It's not making them better at basketball, and it's not necessarily improving their social standing, but they see it and they're like, I like Michael Jordan. Other people like Michael Jordan. I'll wear this t-shirt with his logo on it. And that's a very strange thing that people do. And like you said, I mean, especially if it's car insurance. But again, it's in an ad when you're building up with somebody random. You have to create the desirability in 30 seconds. You have to say, look how handsome this person is. Look how handsome this person's partner is. Look at the deodorant they use. They smell good. Don't you want to smell good like them? You'll have their partner. But with Michael Jordan, it's like, you know Michael Jordan. We know Michael Jordan. Don't you want to be Michael Jordan? Buy this car insurance. It's crazy.
It's still mind-boggling for
it's
me.
Crazy.
It's just,
crazy.
The alternatives, right? First, there's social signaling.
Yeah.
So you can adopt some kind of traits, and that happens very, very, very often. It becomes this fad. You let's say you have someone that is providing you the information in which you are displaying. So kind of style, hairstyle, clothes, or whatever. But there are also other people in your direct environment that would see your adoption of those traits, those ideas or whatever as a signal, valuable signals that you are committed to belong to that group, signals that you have similar moral beliefs or things like that. So that's an alternative, right? I believe so. Instead of us being biased to, okay, I wanted to be Michael Jordan, so I buy the car insurance. You could not actually be Michael Jordan, but actually signal it to other people that also like Michael Jordan that you are in the same boat. You are similar enough to talk about it, to have something to share. Another possibility would be is just the frequency. So the salience of the message, or in this case, the messenger, right? Michael Jordan's face, or like Pele's face, or Cristiano Ronaldo, they are recognized almost by any human in the planet. So it's just very salient. So any message that comes with that saliency just sticks with you because of the proeminency of the framing that the message was delivered to you. So it's just that kind of it would be more related to, I don't know, maybe attentional biases, maybe even memory, right? Like if a random dude telling you something, tomorrow I might not even remember this dude's face anymore. But if it's a familiar face, not directly familiar, like Jordan or someone else, I might like keep it just like on my storage memory. Like, oh, I need this car insurance. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember Michael Jordan selling it. So there's these other two possibilities that is not related to me being a completely moron on thinking that, oh, if I buy Jordan's t-shirt, I will become Jordan and I will play better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think these things are the same things. And let me tell you why. One is the saliency of the image is really important, but I think that the cues are equally salient. Handsomeness and good lookingness, these are just as salient. Wealth is a salient attribute. So I think that I agree that the individual that's being used, say Pele, is a salient individual, but their attributes are the same things that people are emulating. You know, whether he's good looking, whether he's wealthy, whether he's a good athlete, whether he's, sexually desirable. These are all attributes that we quickly try to project in an advertisement that are trying to mimic the same things that would be triggered if you're using a famous face. I do agree with you that people might remember the famous face better, but that's a positive as much as it's a negative, because it might make people more aware of the thing that's being sold to them. They might say, I want this thing. Yeah, it was Pele selling it. And that's a positive. And maybe somebody might say, do I want this thing or do I want it because Pele is selling it? Mm-hmm. So there's this awareness aspect, which I think is interesting. You bring up a really important point, which is signaling, which is, to me, one of the most important things to recognize is that we do things with intention sometimes, in that I can display a whole set of things because I want you to see those things, right? But that's just a gradient from all of the other unconscious things that we do. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's on the same spectrum, pointing at the same thing. Because at one end, if it's signaling, I'm aware of the fact that you think it's important, and I'm aware of the fact that I think your opinion's important, mm-hmm. right? And mm-hmm. so, but why those things? Those things are subconscious, right? Those things are still, I think they're important because I see other people look at them. I want to be kind of like them, and therefore I'm going to display something to them. Mm-hmm. That only the last part of it is something we are aware of, which is, I'm going to show it to them, as opposed to something we're not aware of, which we're trying to show to you. So like, I might wear a Jordan t-shirt because I know you like Jordan, or I might be convinced that a Jordan t-shirt is great, and therefore I wear my Jordan t-shirt. And in either case, the motivation is the same. We're just adding one meta belief as we move from the unconscious things that we believe and do to the conscious things that we believe and do. But the underlying thing is the same, which is the value of that thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. Okay, it's food for thought. I have to think more about that. But I can switch a little bit topic.
Right.
You mentioned
brainwashing.
Brainwashing, yeah, that's gonna be on the list for sure. You mentioned Dawkins, and it's funny because I told you many times that I read as a teenager. It was just like fascinating.
Yeah,
and it's well, there's criticism, and obviously, but I wanted to, because something that has been puzzling me a little bit in Cultural Revolution is sometimes it's how sometimes the idea of fitness is posed. And I think we were talking about fitness just now. So what does actually grant me, like what kind of cultural ideas, cultural beliefs, or system of beliefs grant me actually some advantage in my environment, right? So, and sometimes I get myself, because as I told you, I think the Cultural Revolution research has branched out and has diversified. So, and then and I think actually the biological the explanations of fitness are also sometimes very, very hard, right? Because they have been called a storytelling or how is it called? Just so stories and things like that. So it's also complicated for explaining. Well, this specific kind of animal has this specific kind of organ because it granted advantage in certain this way or that way because the environment looked like that. So when we're talking about how culture evolves, we are also trying to define how certain ideas, beliefs have advantaged fitness increase. So why does some ideas are better than the others? And I wanted to ask you because that goes pretty much in Dawkins' direction of the meme being this unity that tries to self-replicate itself, self-replicate, and that would be a different case, right? So there would be a selfish meme that has only the look as an individual kind of system or organism would have the drive to self-replicate, but in the case of differential fitnesses on ideas, let's put the technology side a little bit. So technology, artifacts, and things like they can have a direct outcome on the fitness. But I think the idea, the beliefs are more interesting here. Are there beliefs that are better than others
Yeah,
surviving? I mean,
yeah, in surviving, certainly. Here's the interesting thing, and we'd kind of gotten into this conversation a bit last week, but there are beliefs that will aid your survival purely because we live in a society. And that's a really interesting thing, because there are other social animals also have this. But if you're a non-social animal, the primary beliefs you need to function are beliefs that must accurately represent your physical environment, in that adaptive beliefs must have some tendency towards accuracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But social beliefs, the way you can sort of resolve that, because you can believe things that are patently false, right? There is a God, right? Normative statement. But you can believe that there is a God, and that inaccurate belief can be adaptive, in that if all the people around you will burn you at the stake if you don't believe in God, you might grow up thinking, I should believe in God.
That's an excellent example.
It's just like, and so there are two ways around that. You can have the awareness that if I tell people I don't believe in God, they will kill me. So I ought to say that I believe in God. That's the signaling part. But either way, I have the belief that one ought to believe in God if they ought to survive, if they want to survive. So there is still that belief. And then I can have the belief that one ought to believe in God if they want to survive, and also have the belief that there is a God, right? And the belief that there is a God is not the adaptive belief. That's the amazing thing, is that some people treat the adaptive belief like the belief in God. The adaptive belief is, if I don't believe in God, they will kill me, whether or not I believe in God.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can we say that the belief in God has larger fitnesses than not believing in God, given the social environment in which you're living? Or is the belief that if you don't believe in God, or is the fact, how did you phrase it? Is both are beliefs?
Both are beliefs.
So is the belief that if I don't believe in God, I will be burned or killed or whatever?
Yeah.
That has larger fitnesses, or is because then we have something interesting, right? Because then we have beliefs that are actual differential in their fitness. They have larger fitnesses, bringing together with them on a bundle other things that has to come together with them.
The belief that is always going to be more adaptive is the belief about others' beliefs. Because say all of a sudden a tribe of violent atheists comes in, kills everybody who believes in God. If you have the belief about the system rather than the belief itself, that's the more adaptive belief. So the belief that if I don't believe in God, they will kill me is the more adaptive belief, right? Because you're able to adapt. You're not committing to the system with belief in God, and now you're able to adapt to an entirely new system where that's not the case. And you're able to have the belief, if I do believe in God, they will kill me. And so that's clearly the more adaptive belief to me, because you're not committing to the thing itself.
So it's always a belief about others' beliefs.
I think that's the more adaptive belief up to a point, right? But I think in a broad sense, if there's a large population, I think that's the more adaptive belief. I think that's why we get certain people who don't commit. That's why we get people who don't signal any of their beliefs at all going into politics, right? Going into law. Because you have this thing where they might not be good friends, and they might not be ever in a cause. We might say that person's just here because they think it's cool to be here, or that person's just here as an observer. They're never let into this sort of like inner circle of trust or whatever.
I didn't catch, actually.
Yeah. So say you have somebody who's just working for a political campaign because that's the party that's in power, right? So I'm working for the campaign because that's the party that's in power. There's somebody else who's at the same level as me who believes in the party, right? If the party collapses, the former the person who just is working for that party because they're in power, has the adaptive belief because they will be able to transition to a new party, right? But so in that sense, that's a more adaptive belief. The issue is when they're having conversations, the person who really believes in that political party might, if they find out that other person's there just because it's individually advantageous, that person might lose out. They might say, fuck you, you don't believe in the cause, you're just here because you think it's important. And if that's a problem for everybody else in that political party, that person who's just there for their own individual gain might be kicked out or might be socially ostracized, even though they might still be used for the cause. So here you have this problem. It's the same thing as if I'm in the community of the violent religious people, right? And they figure out that I don't actually believe in God, then it's a problem. In as much as I can mask that, right? It's advantageous. I need people to not have the belief that I don't believe in the thing that they believe.
I see. So from the individual perspective, the belief that truly has any kind of advantage over all other beliefs is the beliefs which are related to what others believe within my environment.
Yes.
But that should rely on the fact that I should be trust or on.
It's a lonely life, right?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Think about that. And
the downside is that it's a lonely life. Society will keep you alive, but it's a lonely life.
But there is something that doesn't make so much sense there. So
yeah,
that's okay. Not being burned because you are atheist, it's the adaptive belief. But I don't think but the belief in God there in this situation, it's as genuine as the belief that it might be even stronger, only in the case that maybe it's signaling, right? Because I don't think you mentioned that will be a lonely life, and I don't think specifically for the case of religiosity, you would be thinking about the consequences of not believing in God more than the fact that you do believe in God with all your.
Of course.
So you said like, okay, it would be a lonely life if I'm conscious of what is actually the belief that is advantage for me. And I do have to convince other people that I do share the same belief system of them, in spite of the advantage that this belief gives me.
It only gives you that advantage if you convince those people.
Yeah, okay.
It's contingent upon it, right? I can't just hold the belief that if I don't believe in God, they'll kill me, and then not let anybody know that I believe in God, right? So it's necessary. It's a necessary component. That's why it's existentially very lonely. In that case, some people might say, well, then I would just prefer to believe in God because then I wouldn't be lonely. I wouldn't go home every night and think all those people don't know that I'm a fraud, right?
I didn't get this lonely, right?
Right. So say everybody believes in God. You're the only person who doesn't. You have to hide the fact that you don't. Is that not lonely? That's lonely for me. It's intellectually very lonely.
Yeah,
it's
I see.
Existentially very lonely. Yeah. I'd rather be among people with whom I share my closest beliefs. Right? And so if I'm in a situation where I have to pretend that I don't share those really important beliefs.
But if you're pretending, you already do not have the belief. That's what is confusing me.
Which
like if you are, well, I do have to believe in God in order to not die.
Yes.
You still do not believe in God.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's lonely. Everybody else believes in God.
But then you do not believe in God at all.
Exactly. That's why it's lonely. Okay, everybody else believes in God. I don't believe in God. is that not lonely to you?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, cool, cool. I don't have the belief.
Yeah. Because we're talking about the conversation is started when you say, well, let's talk about the believing God.
Yeah.
Which doesn't bring any advantage for the individual in the direct sense of like, mainly because God doesn't exist. It is not going to give anything for you if you pray. You know, that's what we were discussing.
Yeah. But the belief,
and then you said no.
Yeah.
But the value of believing in God is hidden on another belief, which is I live in a society on where I have to believe in God.
No. These are two different things. So you have in the society that you're in that believes in God, believing in God is the adaptive belief, right? It is the best belief to have. Now, if you want your adaptivity to extend beyond the society itself, then the most adaptive belief, in the broadest sense, is the belief that that believing in God is the adaptive belief. Then the meta belief becomes more important, because if I just believe in God, my fitness is limited, constrained to that society. Now, all of a sudden, if I have a meta belief, I don't believe in God, I have the meta belief about the society and God's importance in
it's
that
more
society.
adaptive than
all of a sudden, it's more adaptive purely because then my adaptivity extends beyond the society itself. Now I can live in multiple societies, ones that believe in God, ones that don't believe in God. So now, if you're looking only in that society, the adaptive belief is believe in God. If you're looking at the adaptivity beyond that society itself to include multiple societies, then the meta belief is important. And the issue is, now if you have an individual who only believes, who never has a belief, who never believes in a particular thing, only tries to chronicle the beliefs of others. Like they don't have any political beliefs, they don't have any social beliefs, they don't have any beliefs about music, about art, about anything. They just mimic what's there in order to fit in. People will call them out as a fraud. They'll say, screw you, or like that person's faking, or that person's not committed, or that person's not. So in as much as the meta belief is adaptive, it's equally important that nobody finds out that you only have meta beliefs, right, about those things. So there's this thing, right, because then that's very lonely. It's like being a perpetual spy, because you can never tell anybody what you truly believe, either because you're hiding it or because you don't maintain any. Right? And people who like intellectual discourse need a strong belief to have that intellectual discourse, that it's like relieving almost to have a conversation like what we do, right? In that we have these strong beliefs, we try to educate ourselves to refine those beliefs, and then we debate those beliefs. And that's one of the best parts.
No, I see. It makes sense. I think we talked about that before as well, that there is overlapping of social fields on which there's differential adaptiveness of different beliefs.
Yeah, right on.
So they might overlap, they might not, they might be parallel, they might have similarities or not, they might be incongruent or whatever, but we have to navigate different social fields, and I agree with you that the beliefs would have, or actually beliefs would have different kind of chances of surviving in different fields, how it should obviously be.
So then this also updates or improves the idea of memes and how beliefs are able to survive across contexts, how they're passed on, how they're inherited, how there's drift, how I can hold a belief, but that belief is useful to me, it might be updated as I navigate the world. And I don't view beliefs as something that's out in the world. So I think everybody maintains their own sets of beliefs. So even if you and I can verbalize our belief with the same set of words and agree with the same set of words, I don't think it can ever be fully the same thing, in that you're reconciling it within your network, your hierarchy of beliefs, and I'm reconciling it within my hierarchy of beliefs. And there's this kind of an analog to this is forgetting the author's name now, but it was like 2 decades ago, and they put across this idea that everybody really speaks a different language, because all of the ways in which we understand words, the network between all of the words, the connections between all the words.
Actual
we maintain.
language.
Yeah. In that we use the same words and they refer, there's a certain degree of accuracy. And when I achieve that degree of accuracy, then I'm a good speaker if people can understand. But is it the same exact language? Do I need to posit like the metaphysical existence of the language out in the world that I tap into, rather than I learn, I have beliefs about words and the meanings about words and the connections, but I maintain that internally? So do I need you to have the same exact understanding of a word, or do we need to just agree on the exact understanding of a word? And that, like, yeah, maybe the limit of difference approaches 0, or the limit of similarity approaches 1. Like, maybe it's like on this logarithmic scale where when you're a kid, there's nothing, and then it just rapidly improves, and then it approaches 1, as fast as possible, and gets incredibly close to 1 in terms of the similarity between the language you maintain and the language I maintain. But is it ever identical? Or is it just maintained in my mind and maintained in your mind? And if they're maintained in each of our minds and not out in the world, then how can they ever be the exact same thing?
Well, I think that applies really well for the semantic aspect of language, right? But when you're talking about the grammar, lexicon, and other things, we have prescriptive and descriptive rules, right? We are policed, like, or you should not say this like that. You should not use a double negative. You should not end a sentence with a preposition or things like that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So
I'm talking about the meaning of words.
No,
You
the
are
semantics.
100% correct. The semantics.
No, I agree with you. If we are talking about apples, we are not imagining the same apple ever. We are not having the same apple in our minds. That's obviously.
We could agree on a 1,000-page text description of the word democracy, but I don't think it's going to be the same. Yeah. Although if we do work on a 1,000-page text of the definition of democracy, we are going to get closer in our mutual understanding than we have with anybody else. Like, that's true. We can improve it.
Yeah, if you think about semantics as a meaning, it's built upon the opposition to another meaning, or the similarity to another meaning, or the proximity to another meaning.
Yep.
I think we can create clusters that have more agency or have more boundaries that are similar, or some compositions which are similar. So we were talking about democracy. Democracy is the opposite of autocracy. Okay, we both agree on that. What is it? Is also different than theocracy, so we also agree on that. And then it kind of like, if you would make a map, it would kind of start to look a little bit like that, because we are making the same. But then we would have to make the distinction to the other meanings that we are contrasting, and it gets a little bit complex.
It's a tough thing. And the crazy thing is, you and I have a much more aligned, overlapping understanding of all the terms used within cognitive science. But then we're probably really divergent in any of the fields that we don't do, because I have a worse understanding of those fields, you have a worse understanding of those fields. So we probably have just this greater degree of divergence. Whereas the terms we deal with on a day-to-day basis, even something as difficult to find as cognition, you and I probably have a much closer understanding of the word cognition, what it means, than somebody who doesn't deal with cognition at all.
Yeah. Because, you also would build the meaning through using it, right? Through the experience of using this meaning over and over and trying to probe if other people are catching the same kind of essence that you are trying to convey. So if you're using a word all the time and you kind of like get a wrong feedback of that, like you just change the word.
Yeah, that's the thing. We probably have about 5 or so minutes left.
Okay.
What else do you want to tackle?
I don't know. I heard it somewhere. This thing that was curious, because I was thinking about fads. And I was just thinking, like, why did the emo die? An aspect of Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
Like, why did it?
Damn. Yeah.
Do you remember that? Did you have it in school? Like,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so
of course.
everybody was like,
Yeah, it
having
was a
friends
very
and
big
stuff.
trend.
And just like
Flattened out.
that disappeared.
Yeah, I think it's
Or are they still there? I don't know.
man, maybe they're still there.
They no, I don't.
It
think
doesn't
so.
have the longevity of
it became
metal,
something
of
else, right?
goth, you know?
Yeah,
I
or
think, like,
punks, like
yeah, or punks, yeah. There, I don't think it was. I think this is a really good case. Wow, that's a really good point. There's some trends that die out. There's no reason for them to exist. They're sort of like redundant. They don't fill a niche that anybody likes. They're a fad of the moment.
Yeah, but I was thinking specifically for this case. Why? What happened?
Why? I don't, that's such a good point.
Yeah, the new generation, they have like something. The new generation is just like
Kids these days.
kids is just talking like an old man again already, and I don't know. I find similarities with the neo fads that the new generation are displaying. Something like trap music, or there's like singers which are very sentimental or melodic, or very kind of like this lower kind of or lower valence, or I don't know how to call it.
Yeah,
Downbeat kind
Yeah.
of lyrics and things, and there's like some similarities. I don't know if there is any transform. I don't think there is, and it's just strange. Just like
It is
emos
strange.
grow up, and I don't know.
That hipster movement also kind of died, but punk will
Kind
never
of.
die.
We'll never.
Metal also will never die.
Yeah.
These are things that are very
It's interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Maybe we saw old punks and metal and hippies and people into a kind of like rag scene. We had the chance of seeing older people like that even when we are younger, and then it's easier for you to grow into that model, while the emo have never seen an old emo.
Here's maybe also the thing is that some of these movements ended up getting a defining ideology. And maybe you have this critical threshold of time where if you don't build out an ideology, if everybody doesn't converge on a single ideology, it'll just die out.
The emo doesn't have a belief system, right?
They don't have a belief system. It's an aesthetic fad.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And whereas punk is a political ideology, hip hop is a political ideology.
In some places, just a fashion.
Yeah, that's true. Just like hip hop. But hip hop also has a definable ideology. So does punk.
Yeah.
So does metal. I think like these aspects, once they latch into something more broader than the aesthetic, and there's a political, an ideological movement, then you're in. That's also the truth, because in the same vein that these kind of go from music and aesthetic, creative and aesthetic to political, there's also political that goes to aesthetic.
Yep,
Like the, everybody wearing the green communist jumper.
Yeah.
It's still there. People still wear, military fatigues.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I think I can end up. I can end just saying that, as I mentioned before, I am not an expert, but I'm really enthusiastic and really curious about Cultural Revolution, and I will definitely spend more time reading it and researching on it. I would like to. But it's complex. It's very complex, and it's very interesting and deep within interesting questions. It's very it's just curious, and but yeah, I think I can end on this note. I don't think we have closing remarks for this topic. Culture evolves. And by the way, the word evolution here is just borrowed from Darwinian, but you don't have really to think about getting better. Again, it's not this linear Spencer kind of idea of cultures getting as a species getting somewhere better. Is just a way to say it. So well, there are obviously improvements on fitnesses, but we look at the environment and the context on which it evolves always.
Yeah, fitness is always relative to context. And that's the important thing, is that I think a lot of people will see it very teleologically, where somehow cognition is an endpoint or improvement is defined into a thing. But that to me is like anything, like saying truth exists. is that there's so many different aspects of things which might improve accuracy towards a particular context, but it's not going to be true accurate in a different domain. And I think this deflationary account of truth, in the same way as a deflationary account of any teleology that we might posit with evolution, is crucial to actually understanding what the driving forces are, which is contextual.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right, we'll end it there.